Have you ever felt that someone entered your life at just the right moment, almost like fate stepped in and sent them your way? Maybe it was a stranger who said exactly what you needed to hear, or a familiar soul whose presence felt like a distant memory. Have you ever locked eyes with someone and felt an instant connection, as if you'd known them in another time, another place? If so, you're not imagining things. In this video, we'll explore the idea that the people who come into our lives do so with purpose, not by chance, but by design. Their presence holds meaning. Some bring lessons, some bring light, and some simply change everything. So make yourself comfortable and watch until the end, because what you're about to hear could shift the way you view every person you've ever met. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video. Your support helps us continue producing daily content to support your spiritual journey and inner growth. One peaceful afternoon, as cherry blossoms danced gently on the breeze, the aged monk Hotaka sat meditating beneath a tree in full bloom. A young man named Hiroshi approached, bowing with respect and curiosity in his eyes. "Master," he asked softly, "why do I feel such a powerful connection with some people, as if I've met them before? And with others, I feel a strange discomfort, as though they mean to harm me, even if they haven't said a word? It leaves me confused. Do people cross our paths purely by chance?" Hotaka slowly opened his eyes, his gaze calm and deep. "Dear friend," he replied, "no one enters our life without reason. This truth is more profound than it appears." He gestured to the vast blue sky above them. "Just as the birds do not fly aimlessly but follow unseen wind currents, we too are guided by forces greater than we understand. Every individual you meet plays a role in the unfolding story of your life." Hiroshi watched the birds soar across the sky, their flight seeming purposeful now. "Imagine your life as a garden," Hotaka continued, his voice soft and steady. "Each person is like a seed planted by destiny. Some grow into vibrant flowers that bloom for only a season. Others become strong, lasting trees that remain for years. But all, each and every one, brings with them the potential for growth." The young man nodded thoughtfully, his mind drifting through memories of people who had touched his life. "The ones who cause us pain," the monk added with a note of compassion, "are often our greatest teachers. Like sharp stones on the path. They hurt us, yes, but they also shape our steps, teaching us resilience, patience, and strength." Hiroshi closed his eyes for a moment, remembering trials that had tested and transformed him. And then, Hotaka said, pointing gently to the tree beside him, "There are those who arrive when we need them most, like the roots of this tree that hold firm during the storm. These people support us through our darkest hours. They may not stay forever, but their presence during that time is a gift." Hiroshi's heart stirred as he recalled someone who had been his anchor during a difficult season, someone he had hoped would remain, but who had since drifted away. Finally, the monk spoke once more, his voice filled with reverence. "Some souls, however, are meant to walk beside us always. They are the fixed stars in our sky, constant, shining, faithful, true friends, family, a soulmate. These are the ones who carry our burdens, celebrate our victories, and remind us we're never truly alone. A quiet smile spread across Hiroshi's face as he reflected on those who had never left his side. Hotaka looked up at the petals swirling in the air, and in that moment, a gentle silence settled over them, a reminder that every encounter, whether fleeting or enduring, holds meaning in the great unfolding of our lives. Continuing from the wise words of Master Hotaka, Hiroshi's heart began to awaken to a deeper truth, the understanding that every person he met was not a coincidence, but a meaningful piece of his life's unfolding story. The old monk's eyes sparkled with gentle wisdom as he said, "Recognize and appreciate every person who crosses your path. Young Hiroshi, each one is an essential thread in the fabric of your life story, and you, in turn, are part of theirs." He paused, letting the words sink in like sunlight filtering through cherry blossoms. Life, he continued, is an intricate web of destinies, where every encounter leaves an imprint on our soul. There are, fundamentally, three types of individuals we meet along the way. First, the Master explained, are those who support us in our evolution. They challenge us to break through limitations and guide us, often unknowingly, toward new levels of consciousness and strength. Second, he said with a smile, are those who bring renewal to our inner world. The moment we meet them, we feel it, something shifts. It's as if the universe is silently weaving something sacred, planting the seed of a profound transformation we may not yet understand. And finally, Hotaka added, there are the ones who offer us encouragement. These companions may stay only for a short while, but their presence is vital, like a warm breeze that catches our sails at just the right moment. They remind us of who we are and why we must keep going. As the cherry blossoms gently drifted to the ground, Hiroshi listened intently, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose. In the years that followed, guided by Hotaka's wisdom, he continued his journey with more mindfulness, more grace. Every meeting, whether with a stranger on a forest path or a friend who remained for years, became, in Hiroshi's eyes, a meaningful piece in the mosaic of his life. He came to realize that each encounter, no matter how brief or intense, carried a hidden gift, a lesson designed to help him grow, evolve, and understand himself more deeply. With time, the once young novice grew into a senior monk himself, his eyes now reflecting the same wisdom once seen in Hotaka's. Standing before new generations of seekers, Hiroshi shared the very lesson that had shaped his life. That life is a flowing river of meaningful encounters. Some people come and go like falling leaves, while others stay like ancient trees. Some challenge us, some heal us, some hurt us, some leave without explanation, but each plays a role. Each serves a purpose, and when their task is complete, their presence fades, not as a loss, but as a completed chapter. True wisdom, he would say, is found in opening your heart to every meeting and receiving the lesson it offers, even when it's wrapped in pain or confusion. For it's often during our most difficult moments that the universe sends someone to walk beside us, to uplift us, and to offer the strength we didn't know we had. In the dance of life, Hotaka once told him, every encounter is a note in your soul's melody. Listen carefully, Hiroshi, and find beauty in the harmony of human connection. Whether it's love, friendship, or even a fleeting interaction, a single meeting has the power to change everything. Building on the powerful lesson from the previous story, that every person we meet carries a purpose, and that not all are meant to stay forever. We now turn to a more delicate question. Should we always help, even when we're not asked to? Have you ever found yourself reaching out to help someone who never asked for it? Perhaps your intentions were pure, motivated by love or concern. But later, things didn't turn out the way you hoped. You were left wondering, did I overstep? Did I do more harm than good? It's a dilemma many of us face. And in today's story, Zen wisdom offers clarity. In a peaceful Buddhist monastery, nestled among ancient trees and whispering gardens, the revered monk Noro gathered his disciples for an important lesson. Their eyes reflected quiet curiosity, and their hearts leaned in, eager for answers to a question they had all silently carried. Why do some acts of kindness lead to unexpected disappointment or even suffering? With a calm voice, Noro began, "Life is like a great river. Each of us is a small boat, navigating its winding, often turbulent waters, and too often, we jump into another's boat, trying to steer them without being invited." To bring the metaphor to life, he shared a story passed down through generations. It was about a young monk who, seeing a fellow monk struggling, took it upon himself to intervene, without being asked. Despite his sincere intentions, his interference set off a chain of unintended consequences. Instead of helping, his actions created confusion, hardship, and emotional distance. Suffering, Noro explained gently, is not always something to be avoided. It is often the very chisel that shapes our spirit. Like a gem cut by pressure, each soul must face its own tests to evolve. When we rescue someone before they're ready, we rob them of their transformation. To deepen the lesson, Noro spoke of two lifelong friends, Ash and Masu. When Ash discovered Masu was overwhelmed by financial trouble, he secretly paid off part of Masu's debt. It was a generous act, rooted in compassion, but Masu, though initially grateful, felt stripped of his autonomy and exposed in his vulnerability. Details of his private life had come to light without his consent. That moment planted quiet discomfort between them. Ash, too, felt unease. He had hoped his help would bring closeness, even relief, but instead, it created tension. Masu grew distant. Ash carried confusion and guilt. Their friendship, once effortless, now felt strained. Even good intentions, Noro concluded, can produce unexpected ripples. Each of us is walking the path of our own karma. And when we interfere with someone's lessons, no matter how painful they may seem, we may delay their growth and damage the bond. In other words, unsolicited help can be like stepping into someone's sacred garden without knocking. The flowers may wilt, the harmony may shift. So, next time you feel the urge to step in, pause, ask yourself, have they asked for my help? Or am I easing my own discomfort by acting? True compassion lies not just in giving, but in honoring another's journey, exactly as it unfolds. Building on the deep reflection from the last lesson, Monk Noro's words echo in our hearts. Unsolicited help, no matter how well-intentioned, can disrupt more than it supports. As we dive deeper, we begin to see that karma is not just a mysterious force, it's a finely tuned balance. And even the gentlest touch can shift it in ways we never anticipated. Every action, Noro began, his voice calm like still water, returns to us like an echo in the canyon of time. When we act without being asked, We disturb the delicate flow of someone else's karmic journey. And, perhaps unknowingly, we interfere with our own. He shared another story, this time of a young man who, seeing a beloved friend in distress, rushed in to solve her problems. But she hadn't asked. What followed was not relief, but a tangled chain of misfortunes. What began as kindness turned into a storm of complications. If you step into someone else's labyrinth, Noro said, without being invited, you may get lost yourself, and worse, you might trap them further inside. Imagine trying to heal someone without knowing whether they're ready to give up what made them ill. You might remove the pain, but also the lesson hidden within it. That, Noro explained, is one of the dangers of premature rescue. He spoke of suffering not as a punishment, but as a profound teacher, one that speaks the language of karma. Each person must walk their path, he said, and karma demands that their learning not be rushed. Even the Buddha resisted the urge to help unless asked. He understood that every soul has a sacred process it must honor. Noro reflected on moments in his own life, times when empathy tempted him to reach out to a struggling monk or friend. But again and again, he reminded himself of the Buddha's example. Wait, observe, be present, but do not interfere unless invited. Suffering often results from our own past choices. He continued, when we interrupt someone's struggle, we may steal from them the very transformation they came here to experience. To help his disciples grasp this, Noro shared scenes from daily monastic life. He spoke of dozens of monks he had trained, men who had become wise and centered not because he solved their problems, but because he didn't. He gave them space. He trusted their path. Each action, he said, picking up a smooth stone from the ground, is like dropping this into a pond. He tossed it gently into a nearby fountain. The ripples spread far beyond where it landed. That is karma. If you help without being asked, your ripples touch their life, but also your own. In closing, Noro's wisdom settled like evening mist. Before helping, pause, reflect, ask yourself, are they seeking help, or simply seeking to be seen, heard, and understood? Often, what a person truly needs is not advice, but presence, not rescue, but respect. So let us remember, compassion also means knowing when to step back. True love honors the space needed for someone to grow. From Master Noro's teachings, we learned the importance of restraint, how offering help without being asked can disturb the delicate karmic path each soul must walk. True compassion, he reminded us, isn't always about stepping in, but about knowing when to step back. With that wisdom in mind, we now turn to another crucial lesson: learning how to recognize individuals who drain our energy and compromise our inner peace. Because let's face it, every day, we engage with people of all kinds. Some uplift us with their presence, while others leave us feeling depleted, confused, or even anxious. But how can we tell which people are truly harmful? How do we protect ourselves from those who disturb the balance we work so hard to cultivate? In a peaceful Buddhist monastery, hidden among the gentle hills of rural Japan, lived the elderly monk Hogai, renowned for his insight and deep inner calm. One day, a young woman named Kiera arrived seeking answers. Troubled by recurring anxiety and spiritual exhaustion, she bowed before the monk and said, "Master Hogai, people speak of your wisdom, They say you know how to see through others and recognize those who disturb the soul. Please, teach me. I need to understand how to shield myself from those who hurt me. Hogai studied her face for a moment, serene, yet searching. Then, with the calm certainty of one who had spent a lifetime in quiet contemplation, he began. My dear, he said softly, if you have the patience to listen with your heart, I will guide you. But first, allow me to share something important. The people we call bad or toxic are not always wicked by nature. Many are simply wounded. Their harshness often comes from their own pain, from battles they never asked for, and scars they never truly healed. He paused, letting his words settle like leaves on still water. That's why, he continued, before pushing someone away, ask yourself gently, why do they behave this way? Are they truly harmful, or just broken? And can I remain compassionate while still protecting my peace? If, after honest reflection, the answer leads you to distance, then do so with grace, not bitterness. Kiara nodded slowly, her eyes glistening, not with fear, but with understanding. She saw the depth of empathy in Hogai's gaze. She realized this was not a teaching of judgment, but of wisdom, discernment, and kindness. Hogai went on, now that your heart is open, let me tell you the first sign to watch for: manipulation. His voice became more focused, but never harsh. A manipulator does not wear a mask of cruelty. No, they often appear kind, generous even, but look closely, and you'll see the truth. They twist reality for their benefit, bending your perception until you question yourself. It could be a colleague who quietly takes credit for your work, or a friend who always plays the victim, draining your energy while never taking responsibility. Manipulation, he said, is not always loud. Often, it whispers. He leaned forward, hands folded in his lap. When someone constantly bends the truth, when their words leave you confused or guilty, when you feel emotionally controlled, these are signs. Their presence creates tension, not peace. They do not support your growth, they keep you tangled in their web. Kiara sat silently, absorbing the weight of his words. She thought of moments in her life when her joy had faded in the presence of others, though she hadn't known why. Now, it began to make sense. And yet, Hogai added, you must remember, before reacting in anger, pause, breathe, ask yourself if you've given this person a chance to change, if they're aware of their behavior, or simply lost in their own suffering. Then decide, not with judgment, but with clarity. He paused once more, his voice gentle as wind through temple bells. When someone around you brings more chaos than calm, more fear than support, your duty is not to fix them. It is to protect the garden of your spirit. Life, he said, is a sacred journey, and like a path lined with stones, you will encounter both beauty and discomfort. Your challenge is to walk wisely, to recognize what lifts you up and what weighs you down. Let your heart stay open, but guard its peace like a flickering flame in a storm. And so, with this quiet lesson, Master Hogai began to unveil the 9 signs of people who may be silently sabotaging your inner balance. But remember, the goal is not to condemn them, but to reclaim your energy, your clarity, your light. Continuing from the monk's compassionate warning about recognizing toxic traits, Kiara leaned in closer, eager to learn the rest. Each sign was like a lantern lighting a dark path, helping her better understand who to trust and how to protect her peace. Now, Hogai said, let's return to our path. The first sign, as he had mentioned earlier, is manipulation disguised as concern. Picture someone suggesting that your superiors have spoken poorly of you, urging you to leave your job for another opportunity. It may appear like advice, but behind the mask lies self-interest. They want to remove you, not help you. As Kiera nodded, recalling a similar moment from her past, the monk continued, the second sign is a lack of genuine empathy. Watch out for those, Hogai said, who only appear when they need something. They nod as you speak, but their eyes are elsewhere. When you need a shoulder, they vanish. The third sign is being a constant source of conflict. Imagine someone who always ignites arguments. Even in peaceful environments, their presence darkens a room. They feed on drama and tension, stirring trouble for their own amusement or gain. The fourth sign, Hogai added, is a dominating personality, someone who insists on controlling your life. Have you ever shared a dream or plan, only to feel pushed in a different direction? These people want your life to orbit around their desires, not your fulfillment. Kiera thought of someone who fit this description perfectly. How small and stifled she had felt around them. The fifth sign, the monk said gently, is a violation of personal boundaries. It may be subtle, a friend who reads your messages without asking, or someone who intrudes on your quiet moments. But over time, these violations build discomfort and erode your sense of safety. The sixth sign is habitual dishonesty. Picture a person spinning stories, exaggerating, twisting facts to seem more important or interesting. Hogai paused. It's like a web, he said, and the longer you're caught in it, the harder it becomes to see the truth. Kiera thought of Luca, a friend who constantly fabricated tales to boost his image, never malicious, but always exhausting. The seventh sign, Hogai warned, is vindictiveness. These are the people who, when criticized or rejected, strike back. They may gossip, sabotage, or shame you. Kiera was reminded of Marta, a colleague who retaliated with false rumors just because Kiera had offered honest feedback. The eighth sign is the insatiable need for attention. They dramatize every situation, no matter how minor, just to be the center of it all. They exhaust the group's energy. Hogai said softly. Kiera sighed, recalling the friend who turned every gathering into a one-person show. And finally, the ninth sign, a refusal to accept responsibility. They never admit fault. If something goes wrong, they'll find someone to blame. Their world, Hogai said, is built on deflection. As Kiera reflected on these 9 signs, her heart was heavy, but also clearer. She now had the wisdom to protect herself with compassion, and to walk away when necessary. After hearing the last of the 9 signs, Kiera couldn't help but recall her own brother, someone who, even as a child, stirred up trouble and always managed to shift the blame onto her. Hogai paused, allowing the silence to do its work. He gave Kiera a moment to let the weight of the teachings sink in. Then, in a voice calm yet firm, he said, recognizing these 9 signals requires deep self-honesty. Often, the hardest thing is to admit that even people we love, family, friends, might be hurting us. Knowingly or not, he continued, but if we truly wish to preserve our inner peace, We must develop the courage to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Kiera nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and contemplation. Awareness, Hogai said gently, is your shield, so be vigilant in your relationships. Pay attention not just to words, but to energy, to patterns. The young woman bowed in gratitude, expressing her heartfelt thanks for his wisdom. But Hogai, sensing that his student needed one last reminder, added, beyond recognizing signs, Kiera, you must learn to trust your intuition. That quiet voice inside you. It often knows what your mind tries to ignore. If something doesn't feel right, he continued, pause, reflect. Don't be afraid to walk away from toxic bonds if doing so restores your serenity. True peace is too precious to trade for the illusion of harmony. This story, with its simple yet powerful guidance, is not just about recognizing danger, it's about the art of discernment. About learning to choose the company we keep with care, and guarding our spirit from those who might drain it. It reminds us that inner peace is not a luxury, but a necessity, and that we must nurture relationships that honor and uplift it. And just as Kiera was beginning to absorb this transformative lesson, Hogai prepared her for the next part of her spiritual journey. A topic both challenging and liberating, forgiveness. Often praised for its healing power. Forgiveness, when viewed through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, holds deeper, more complex truths. The story now turns toward a more reflective path, inviting us to rethink everything we thought we knew about forgiveness. In a quiet monastery nestled in the misty mountains of India, lived an elderly monk named Kuman. Revered for his deep understanding of the Dharma, he welcomed seekers from all walks of life. One day, a troubled man arrived, carrying unseen burdens. Master Kuman, he asked, his voice trembling, how can I truly learn to forgive in the Buddhist way? With calm compassion, Kuman invited him to sit, and with a soft smile, began to share a story. After guiding Kiera through the art of discernment in relationships, Master Hogai's teachings naturally transitioned into a deeper lesson, one that would challenge not only the mind but also the heart, the power and paradox of forgiveness. This new story, shared by the wise monk Kuman, offered a glimpse into the profound way Buddhist wisdom approaches forgiveness. Not as a quick fix, but as a silent transformation of the soul. Kuman began with the story of a wealthy merchant, a father of 2 sons who had slowly drifted away from the family business. Instead of pursuing profits and prestige, the young men were drawn to the serene presence of the Buddha, choosing stillness over success, and spiritual insight over material gain. The father, watching this shift, grew frustrated. What he once considered pride in his family legacy began to feel like loss. His worry fermented into anger, especially as he blamed the Buddha for influencing his son's change in direction. One day, overwhelmed with resentment, the merchant made a decision. He would confront the Buddha directly. He stormed toward the gathering where the Buddha sat teaching, his heart filled with fury. As he approached, he saw the enlightened one seated in silence, eyes half closed, radiating a peaceful energy that seemed to still the very air around him. But the man's pride would not yield to this serenity. Fueled by his unresolved anger, he spat in the Buddha's face. Shocked, the disciples rose, their instincts calling them to defend their teacher. Yet the Buddha remained still, completely unmoved. He neither wiped his face nor cast judgment. His eyes remained calm. His gentle smile remained unbroken. It was as if a ripple of quietness had passed through the crowd, blanketing the atmosphere in stillness. Cummins' voice softened as he described this moment. The Buddha did not react. Not with anger, not with resistance. He simply received the act without letting it define him. The merchant, standing in front of such unwavering calm, felt something shift inside. His anger, once so consuming, began to feel foolish, small in comparison to the depth of peace before him. The insults he had planned faded from his lips. Instead of lashing out, he found himself reflecting. The Buddha offered no revenge, no rebuke, only presence and compassion. Cummins paused in his story and turned to the man seated before him. "You see," he said, "forgiveness is not an act. It is not a sentence spoken aloud. It is the decision to let go, to stop carrying the poison of the past. It is the willingness to see the other, and even ourselves, with new eyes." He continued the tale. That night, the merchant could not sleep. The image of the smiling Buddha haunted his thoughts, standing in stark contrast to the act he had committed. Guilt, shame, and reflection tangled within him. He was torn between who he had been and who he might still become. Days passed. During this time, the merchant experienced something profound, a slow unraveling of the stories he had told himself. He came to realize that the Buddha's silence had not been weakness, but an invitation, a mirror reflecting his own inner storm. Imagination, Cummins said thoughtfully, can either be your guide or your tormentor. Left unchecked, it can replay regrets and fuel resentment like an echo chamber. But in the hands of awareness, it can help you reshape your future. And slowly, the merchant understood. The Buddha had not condemned him. Instead, he had offered him a new path. As Cummins' tale continued, the lesson from the previous chapter, about the Buddha's calm and non-judgmental response, echoed in the hearts of those listening. Now, the story turned toward what happened next, how the merchant, transformed by this encounter, began his journey of true repentance. Gradually, the man abandoned his pride and the vengeful thoughts that once consumed him. The anger that had once driven him to humiliate the Buddha had dissolved into quiet reflection. And one day, moved by a deep sense of remorse and a sincere desire for redemption, he returned to the Buddha's presence. This time, he did not come in defiance, but with humility. Bowing low at the Buddha's feet, he said softly, "Forgive me, great master. My ignorance made me blind. I could only see my family's prosperity and not the greater truth." The Buddha, his eyes half opened and his face still adorned with that serene smile, listened silently. But when the man asked for forgiveness, the Buddha gently shook his head and replied, "I cannot forgive you." The merchant's heart sank. "But why, master?" he asked, puzzled and ashamed. "Did I not wrong you?" Cummins paused at this moment of the story, letting the question settle in the listener's mind. The Buddha's answer, Cummins explained, was filled with wisdom. "There is nothing to forgive. You have done me no harm." This wasn't denial, it was clarity. The Buddha had never judged the man, never internalized his action as a personal offense. He had seen beyond the man's past, beyond his anger, and into his essence. The act had passed like a breeze through an open window, noticed, but not clung to. Through this gentle refusal, the Buddha taught an even deeper lesson: that forgiveness is not always something to be given. It is something to be realized within. The merchant was struck by this truth. He began to understand that forgiveness, especially in the Buddhist path, is not an external transaction. It is an inner liberation, a release from the self-inflicted shackles of guilt and shame. Inspired by the Buddha's presence, the merchant set out on a quiet, personal journey, the path of self-forgiveness. With time, he learned to release the heavy burden he had been carrying. He turned to meditation, not as an escape, but as a refuge. There, in the stillness of each breath, he began to see the present moment clearly, free from the haunting echoes of the past or anxieties about the future. Kamen, turning to the man beside him, said gently, "Forgiveness is not merely an act we extend to others. It is a kindness we offer ourselves. When we stop being prisoners of our imagination, when we let go of our inner torment, we make space for peace." The story concluded with the merchant, now transformed, returning once again to the Buddha, not in shame, but in gratitude, and this time, the Buddha welcomed him with a radiant smile, a living embodiment of compassion and acceptance. Kamen concluded, "Forgiveness is not a final gesture. It is a process, a sacred unfolding on the spiritual path. When we forgive ourselves and others, we free our hearts from the chains of the past and open the doors to a more luminous, compassionate future." And what is the true moral of this story? That in Buddhist thought, forgiveness isn't a mere word, it is an awakening. It isn't granted or requested, it is experienced. Through forgiveness, we offer compassion as a mirror, allowing those who've erred to see themselves more clearly. After all, when one causes harm to another, they also wound their own soul. For karma always returns to its source. Having realized that true forgiveness begins within, the merchant's journey reminded us that when harm is done, it often rebounds on the one who caused it, like a boomerang returning to its thrower. Sooner or later, that person must confront their own conscience and seek forgiveness, not just from others, but from themselves. Forgiveness, as we saw, is not only personal liberation, it can also ignite transformation in others. It becomes a quiet catalyst for healing, awareness, and growth, a bridge stretching toward a future built on understanding and serenity. Yet, in our pursuit of peace, there's a danger we seldom notice: being too kind. Too often, many of us give so much that we forget ourselves in the process. Have you ever stopped to wonder, why do I always feel the need to be kind, even when it hurts me? Or why are there people who seem endlessly generous, offering help even when no one asked? In the Zen teaching that follows, we dive into the delicate dance of kindness, its power, its potential traps, and the wisdom required to keep it in balance. This tale offers deep insights for anyone striving to maintain inner peace while navigating the complexities of human connection. In a remote and tranquil Japanese monastery, surrounded by the timeless stillness of nature, lived an elderly monk named Ero, known far and wide for his serene wisdom. One day, a young woman named Kiera arrived, her heart weighed down by disappointment. "Master," she said, her voice quivering, "I've always tried to be kind. I've helped others, listened, and given without expecting anything. But in the end, all I've received is pain from those I called friends. What am I doing wrong?" Arrow gave her a warm, compassionate smile. Then, with a calm voice, he began to tell a story passed down among monks for generations. He spoke of a village nestled in the embrace of a green forest, where kindness and mutual support were the foundation of life. At the village's heart stood a majestic cherry tree, its roots deep, its blossoms vibrant. It symbolized the strength and generosity of the villagers. "Picture this tree," Arrow told her, "rooted firmly in the earth, flourishing because the people cared for it together. They harvested its fruits with gratitude and gave to one another freely." But, he explained, things began to change. Over time, some villagers became selfish. They took more than their share of the fruit and stopped nurturing the tree. Their imbalance slowly infected the entire village. Kindness gave way to greed, and the community spirit that once united them began to fade. Arrow looked gently at Kiara. "This, dear one, is a lesson. When kindness is offered without wisdom, it becomes a well that dries up." Kiara listened closely, her eyes searching his for clarity. Arrow continued, "Generosity must be balanced. We should give with open hearts, but not blindly. If we always give, never protecting our own boundaries, we risk draining our own energy. And then, how can we help anyone at all?" Kiara nodded, beginning to understand. "Kindness is powerful," Arrow said softly. "But when it crosses the line, when it becomes a reflex that ignores your own needs, it becomes toxic kindness. It's no longer compassion, it's self-erasure. You become invisible in your own life." In that moment, something shifted in Kiara. A new awareness emerged, not about abandoning kindness, but about anchoring it in self-respect and discernment. Continuing from the lesson of toxic kindness, the monk gently reminded Kiara that unchecked generosity, no matter how noble, can quietly erode one's sense of self. The story of the cherry tree wasn't just a metaphor. It was a mirror held up to those who give endlessly without replenishing themselves. "Think of a parent," Arrow said softly, "who gives everything, time, energy, love, for the happiness of their children, to the point of forgetting their own needs." His voice carried a quiet gravity. "What happens when that balance is lost?" He continued, illustrating how, over time, some villagers, driven by desire to accumulate, had stopped caring for the tree that had once sustained them. Their greed, disguised as progress, severed the sacred bond between giving and receiving. The result? The once lush cherry tree began to wither. It was a vivid warning. Generosity without respect for limits is not kindness, but depletion. Kiara listened closely, her heart stirred by parallels in her own life. She thought of friendships where she had given endlessly, hoping for love in return, only to be met with silence or indifference. Noticing her contemplation, the monk added gently, "Helping others is not wrong, but helping at the cost of your well-being, that is not compassion. That is self-neglect." He spoke of the subtle difference between wanting to do good and feeling obligated to please. Sometimes, we think someone needs us when in truth, they are capable of their own path. Time passed slowly in the stillness of the monastery, each word settling like petals falling gently to the earth. Arrow and Kiara continued their deep exchange on the nature of giving, one rooted not in obligation, but awareness. True generosity, Arrow explained, is like a river that nourishes without flooding. It flows naturally, from a place of sincerity, not sacrifice. Give, he advised, but do not empty yourself. Let your kindness bloom, but do not lose your roots. Then, with a quiet smile, he offered one final image. Kiara, be like the cherry tree. Offer your fruit with joy, but never forget to guard your roots. Do not let your branches bend so low that you vanish beneath the weight of others' expectations. Kiara felt a shift inside her, as if the fog of confusion was slowly lifting. The monk's words were more than wisdom, they were a gentle call to self-respect. So what is the moral of this story? That generosity is indeed a powerful and beautiful force, but only when grounded in balance. When we give without expectations, with love and clarity, we uplift both others and ourselves. But when we give too much, too often, without pause, we risk becoming invisible, even to ourselves. Let your kindness be a light, not a shadow that hides who you truly are. Coming from the wisdom shared in the previous lesson, Kiara began to understand that extreme kindness, when unchecked, can lead to self-neglect. It was a powerful reminder that true generosity must walk hand in hand with healthy boundaries. And as she sat in quiet contemplation, the monk's voice turned toward an even more delicate matter. Recognizing when someone enters our life not to uplift us, but to tear us down. Sometimes, the Master began, in our desire to be good people, we overextend ourselves. We say yes to every request, suppress our own needs, and mistake exhaustion for virtue. But this is not true kindness, it's self-sacrifice without wisdom. He paused, letting the words settle like falling snow. Eventually, when we lose the ability to say no, we become easy targets for manipulation. Our motivation falters, our self-esteem withers, and our mental balance begins to wobble. So, what's the answer? Should we stop being kind? A few of the disciples shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to respond. No, the monk said gently. Kindness is a gift, but like any gift, it must be given wisely. He encouraged them to draw firm yet respectful boundaries, to say no without guilt, and to build a list of priorities where self-care is not forgotten. We can still help others, he added, but not at the cost of abandoning ourselves. A kindness that damages the giver is not true compassion. Then, his gaze turned sharp. Now let me ask you this. Have you ever felt that someone entered your life not to support you, but to destroy your dreams? The room fell still. Unfortunately, the monk continued, such people do exist. They hide behind smiles, yet act from envy, frustration, or deep-rooted resentment. This story I now share will help you recognize the warning signs of such individuals. He gestured for them to listen closely. In this monastery village, long ago, there lived a wise man who owned a rare and beautiful gem. One day, a charming stranger approached him, flattering his wisdom and asking to admire the stone. As the sage opened his palm, the stranger diverted his attention with cunning words and secretly replaced the gem with a worthless shard of glass. Gasps rippled through the temple. The deception was swift, the monk said, and by the time the wise man noticed, it was too late. Manipulation, he warned, is like a silent shadow. Those who aim to harm us often don't attack us directly. Instead, they twist reality, confuse our instincts, and chip away at our trust. That's why recognizing manipulation is the first key to protecting your peace. As the tale unfolded, the disciples began to look inward, recalling moments in their own lives when they had ignored the early signs, until it was too late. Following the first sign of manipulation, Master Aisen's lesson deepened, leading his disciples further into the shadows of human behavior. The air in the temple was still, and every ear leaned closer as he began to share another tale, one that illuminated the second warning sign: destructive criticism. Imagine a flourishing garden, Aisen said softly, where flowers bloom in the morning light, delicate and full of promise. But instead of being nurtured, day after day, heavy boots trample the blossoms. At first, the damage seems small, but soon, the garden begins to wither. He paused, letting the metaphor sink in. Destructive criticism is much like those footsteps. He explained, it crushes our spirit slowly, one harsh word at a time. And often, it comes from those who claim to mean well. That's why we must always ask ourselves, is this criticism helping me grow, or making me shrink? The disciples nodded, some reflecting on wounds still healing from past words that had cut too deeply. Aisen then smiled gently and introduced the third sign: social isolation. He told the story of a fisherman from a humble village, a man known for his honesty and generosity. He was the kind who would give away his last meal if you needed it. Aisen said, but envy crept into the heart of another. This envious man, resentful of the fisherman's popularity, began to whisper lies behind his back. One by one, the fisherman's friends began to drift away. Customers stopped coming. Doors that once opened with warmth now remained cold and shut. Social isolation, Aisen continued, is like severing a tree from its roots. Even the strongest will eventually wither. When someone seeks to harm you, they will often begin by cutting the ties that connect you to others. He urged his listeners to build sincere, strong relationships, to guard their integrity, and to never let whispers define their worth. Then came the fourth sign, defamation. To illustrate, he invited a traveling guest to share a personal story. Not far from here, the guest began, there was a merchant loved by the townspeople. Fair, honest, and kind, but a rival, driven by jealousy, began spreading falsehoods, accusations, subtle at first, then louder, until suspicion took root. The merchant, though innocent, was slowly abandoned, trust eroded, and his livelihood collapsed. Forced to leave the town, he carried with him not only heartbreak but a painful lesson. Defamation, Aisen said gravely, is poison with no scent, yet its effects are devastating. Those who wish to destroy us will not always raise their fists. They'll use their tongues like swords, striking with slander instead of steel. He reminded his disciples that the best defense is truth and transparency. Let your character speak so loudly, he said, that no lie can drown it out. Several disciples, moved by the stories, lowered their eyes as old memories resurfaced, moments when they, too, had suffered from the cruelty of others' words. The disciples, still moved by the lesson on defamation, sat in deep thought. Some recalled painful moments when words, not weapons, had wounded them the most. Others began to consider how, thanks to Master Aisen's teachings, they might now defend their reputations before the damage is done. After a short pause, Ison continued with the fifth sign, one that cuts deeply into our potential, the sabotage of opportunities. Picture a skilled craftsman, the master began, who, after years of learning and refining his art, is finally ready to present his masterpiece. But each time he nears success, something goes wrong, tools disappear, blueprints are mysteriously altered, materials ruined. He looked around at his disciples, letting the image settle in. Sabotage, he said, is like a bitter wind, blowing out the flame of progress just as it begins to glow. Ison explained how those with ill intentions will not always strike us directly. Instead, they subtly disrupt our path, derailing opportunities through envy, spite, or fear of our growth. To guard against such sabotage, he urged his listeners to stay vigilant, surround themselves with trustworthy people, and keep their ideas safe, especially during their most fragile beginnings. Don't boast about your dreams before they're ready to fly. Ison warned, protect your light while it's still a flicker. As the afternoon wore on, the fragrance of hot tea floated in the air, and a soft fog crept over the monastery grounds, wrapping the space in quiet magic. Ison then introduced the sixth signal, the violation of privacy. In an ancient city, he recounted, there once lived a guardian of sacred scrolls, texts full of powerful secrets. A man, envious of the guardian's knowledge, tried to infiltrate his sanctuary and steal his wisdom. Thanks to a loyal confidant in his own foresight, the guardian managed to protect his treasure. Ison turned to his students with a calm, serious tone. Your private world, he said, is a sanctuary. Those who wish to harm you will often begin by invading it. He reminded them that what we hold dearest, our thoughts, emotions, fears, and aspirations, must be shielded. Sharing too much with the wrong people can give them the very tools they need to use against us. Choose carefully, he said, who you allow past the threshold of your inner world. As the fog thickened and twilight approached, Ison revealed the seventh signal, espionage. In a distant land, he told them, there lived a noble warrior whose strength was legendary. Fearing his rise, a rival sent spies to observe his every move, hoping to predict and defeat him. But the warrior, guided by keen intuition, uncovered the scheme and foiled their plans. Espionage, Ison explained, is like a silent shadow creeping at the edge of your awareness. Those who seek to destroy us may not attack directly, but they study, mimic, and monitor, waiting for the right moment to strike. We must maintain clarity, he said. Know your environment, trust your instincts. Finally, the master's voice dropped into a solemn tone as he revealed the eighth and final sign, physical aggression and threats. In a remote valley, he recounted, a monk dedicated his life to helping troubled youth turn away from crime. His efforts, however, disrupted the interests of a corrupt man who sought control over these young souls. Threatened by the monk's goodness, the man resorted to violence, ordering his beating, hoping that fear would silence him. The disciples grew still. Physical aggression, Ison warned, is the last boundary, the darkest frontier. When all other tactics fail, some resort to brute force to destroy what they cannot manipulate. The master's words echoed through the room, a powerful reminder of the darkness that can emerge when light shines too brightly. Following the somber lesson on physical threats, Master Isen's voice softened once more. He reminded his disciples that those who wish to destroy us may go so far as to threaten or harm us physically. In such cases, he stressed, it is not weakness, but wisdom, to seek help. Protection is not only a right, it is a responsibility. As the day came to a close and the last tale had been shared, Isen looked out at his disciples with compassionate, knowing eyes. My children, he said gently, life is an intricate dance, and those we encounter along the way can either be our partners in grace or our shadows in disguise. Be watchful of the signs, but don't let fear lead the way. Cultivate trust, and plant seeds of mutual respect. Protect the light within you. Don't let the shadows extinguish it. He paused, then added with quiet clarity, surround yourself with people who truly care. This final reflection led into a new, yet connected lesson. One that touches nearly every soul at some point, the question of friendship. Are you someone who has a large circle of companions? Or do you find yourself with very few close friends? Or perhaps none at all? In today's world, the word friend is tossed around too easily. A mere acquaintance can be mistaken for a confidant. But what does true friendship actually mean? That's the question posed in the next Zen story, one that speaks to personal growth and inner clarity. Stay until the end, because the moral may just shift your perspective on friendship entirely. It begins with a girl named Elena, a kind-hearted young woman who often felt sad and alone. Each day, she watched the townspeople around her sharing laughter, forming tight circles of friendship, while she walked alone. This contrast painted her world in shades of longing. Why did everyone else seem so connected? Why was she always on the outside looking in? Determined to find peace, Elena embarked on a quiet journey through Japan. She sought out the wisdom of Kobo, a revered hermit monk who lived in seclusion at the edge of a sleepy town. His reputation wasn't built on grandeur, but on gentleness, insight, and above all, solitude. That's why Elena believed he might understand her sorrow. Sitting respectfully before him, she spoke with a voice low and fragile. Master Kobo, I feel so alone. Everyone else seems happy in their groups. Why is it so hard for me to find friendship like that? The monk listened quietly, his gaze calm and kind. Then, he invited her to sit and said with warmth, Elena, friendship is indeed a precious treasure. But your happiness should never be weighed by the number of companions at your side. Let me explain why having few friends, or even none, does not mean your life lacks meaning. Elena, still wrapped in a veil of melancholy, leaned in as the monk began to share his thoughts, wisdom refined by decades of meditation and reflection. Dear Elena, he said gently, human relationships are sacred, but they are not meant to be measured in quantity, only in quality. Continuing their conversation on friendship, Master Kobo leaned in gently, as if inviting Elena to journey a little deeper into her own heart. The previous question, about quality versus quantity in relationships, was still echoing in her mind. Now, he asked again, but with more focus, would you rather have a crowd to share fleeting conversations and small talk, or just a few souls with whom you can exchange deep emotions? Share silence comfortably, and feel truly seen? Elena, hearing the weight of this question, paused. Her gaze drifted toward the window. The faces she used to envy, surrounded by laughter and company, suddenly appeared differently in her mind's eye. How many of those friendships were real? How many were just performances in disguise? Kobo, sensing her reflection deepen, smiled with quiet satisfaction. "You see," he said softly, "having few friends, or even none at all, should not be viewed as a shortcoming. In truth, it can be a great strength." He continued, "With fewer relationships, you are gifted a rare kind of freedom, a space where authenticity breathes. You can be exactly who you are, unfiltered, without the need to please or perform. Think of a hobby you cherish, even if others find it odd. In solitude or with just one kindred spirit, that passion becomes yours to fully enjoy." Elena thought instantly of her secret love, stargazing. On clear nights, she would spend hours beneath the sky, marveling at the constellations. Yet back at school, her classmates mocked this joy, calling it weird. Their words used to sting, but now, those moments under the stars felt like sacred gifts she didn't need anyone to understand. Kobo nodded and added, "Quantity, my dear, has never equaled quality. One genuine connection, one friend who understands you without explanation. Such a bond is a rare and priceless treasure. It's far better than being surrounded by dozens who barely know your soul." Elena remembered a moment when a quiet friend had supported her through a very dark day. No speeches, no advice, just presence and warmth. That kind of connection, she realized, was worth more than 1,000 cheerful acquaintances. Kobo let the silence stretch for a moment, allowing her to absorb the realization, before offering another piece of wisdom. "Relationships," he said, "require emotional energy. They take time, attention, and heart. When you focus that energy on a few who truly matter, your emotional life becomes richer, not poorer." He gave her a simple yet profound example. Think about how many conflicts erupt in large friend groups. Misunderstandings, gossip, tensions. But when your circle is small and built on trust, you preserve your energy for those who uplift you. "And if you must ever face a disagreement," he continued, "wouldn't you rather it be with someone who actually matters to your life?" Elena nodded slowly, a new calm settling in her chest. Something inside her was beginning to shift, and for the first time, her solitude didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like choice. Having just explored the value of meaningful relationships over quantity, the story continues with Elena reflecting deeply on her own experiences. She had come to realize that the noisy crowd, once so enticing, often brought more stress than joy, while heartfelt one-on-one connections gave her a sense of comfort and peace. Master Kobo gently guided her further, encouraging a new perspective on solitude. "Loneliness," he said, "is not a curse, it's an invitation. In the stillness of solitude, we often stumble upon our truest selves." He spoke of how, when freed from the pressure of social expectations, people begin to explore forgotten passions, dormant dreams, and hidden talents. "What would you discover?" he asked, "if no one were watching?" Elena's mind wandered to nights spent under the stars, her heart full and quiet. Those moments had been hers alone, free of judgment, yet rich with meaning. She recalled how, without the need for approval or applause, she had learned more about who she truly was. Kobo continued with warmth in his voice. "You see, having fewer friends allows for more moments of self-reflection. It grants the space to nurture your spirit, to listen inward, and to grow. Solitude can be a sacred ground for spiritual evolution. He reminded her that the absence of social constraints often opens new doors. Imagine receiving an offer to start a new life in a faraway land. When you have no crowd to please or explain yourself to, you are free to embrace that opportunity fully. Elena thought of the brave souls who'd done just that, left everything behind with only a suitcase and a dream. And yet, with even one genuine friend, she realized the distance could never break that bond. With a gentle smile, Kobo concluded, "True friends are like constellations, few, but always shining. They don't disappear with distance or time. They're with you in spirit, guiding you silently." Elena felt something shift inside her. The sadness that had once accompanied her solitude was now replaced with clarity. She finally understood that fewer friends didn't mean she was alone. It meant she had space to foster depth, meaning, and inner peace. The monk wrapped his arm around her shoulders softly and said, "Your happiness, dear Elena, must not depend on numbers, but on the authenticity of the connections you choose. I have seen those with a single true companion live richer lives than crowds could ever offer." He paused, letting the silence settle. "And never forget, those who walk alone often carry within them the richest worlds, the deepest hearts, and the most luminous souls." The moral of this tale is simple but profound. Loneliness, when redefined, becomes a powerful companion in your journey toward happiness, spiritual awakening, and personal fulfillment. You don't need many friends to be content, just the right ones. Especially if your heart naturally beats to a quieter, more thoughtful rhythm.